Hey there, it's Tess and Christina. We're the co-hosts of Authentically Wild, a podcast that's here to shake up how you see life, relationships, and your healing journey.
This isn't your typical feel-good chatter. We're diving headfirst into the raw, real, and transformative conversations that can change everything you thought you knew about yourself and the life you're currently living.
We're pulling back the curtain on our day-to-day lives, talking about relationships, parenthood, personal growth, trauma, and spirituality. Both of us have transitioned from lives that felt stuck and inauthentic to discovering a way of living that's raw, honest, and deeply healing.
The breakthroughs that we've had, they've been wild. And they're exactly why this podcast exists. We knew we couldn't keep these conversations to ourselves.
So if you felt lost, stuck, or like there's something more out there for you, this is your sign.
It's in the hardest, messiest seasons of life that we discover our truest selves. But here's the thing, the choice to dig in, that's all yours, baby.
So buckle up,
because shit's about to get wild.
Hello.
Hello. We're back again for another episode.
Yay.
Yay. Can we just say first, all of you listening, we love you. You guys are the best.
Yeah. So much support for that new We're Back episode. So excited to really dive into it on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels nice to be back at it with some more consistency. And I mean, I just love us connecting. So there's that right there. But also just, this is the real stuff. Like, let's talk about it. Let's dig in. Let's get real because, you know, ain't no messing around. So this is a big topic. The nervous system in itself, the nervous system is a big topic, but what Tess and I have found on our journeys is, in a really beautiful way, the different ways that our voices have come through or been stifled due to nervous system responses, due to the things that we have been through that have been traumatic. And we're really going to break that down in today's episode. So we've got some new pieces as well, which are really exciting. We're going to take you through a little somatic piece to help you ground your energy, bring you to a place of regulation, presence, safety. We're going to go through the different levels of the nervous system. We're going to talk about how our own personal experiences have played a really big deciding factor in how we've learned to use or not use our voices in our life and in our relationships, and really provide you with tools and strategies to help support you on your own journey. You know, if you're listening and this is the first time you're learning about the nervous system, welcome. This is going to be probably a very groundbreaking episode.
Grab your notepad.
Grab your notepad. Save the episode. And if you know a little bit about the nervous system, then this will be an even deeper dive. And as per usual, we will be sharing some really helpful tips, tools, strategies, as well as our own personal experience to help you understand on a deeper level your nervous system and how it plays such a key piece in everything.
Especially your voice.
Especially your voice, especially how you would respond in your relationships, in your life, just all of it. So buckle up, baby. So what I want to do is take us through a little somatic piece. This is something that I actually do in different ways with clients, whether it's at the beginning of a session or with the ladies in my Soul Empowered community. And essentially what you can view this as is an opportunity for you to ground in, find connection, and create deeper safety in your body. Because what we don't always realize is there's so much going on in our external reality, and our energy is always connected to all of that. And so it becomes so important to go within, to disconnect from the external and take that internally. Wherever you are, if you're driving, keep your eyes open, please. If you're at home, even if you're busy, you know, maybe you're doing things around the house or you're out for a walk, but just take a moment here to ground in with us. So if you can, I'm going to have you close your eyes and just beginning to notice your breath, beginning to notice how your breath feels going in and out of your body. The breath is such an important indicator of where we are at in any given moment. And so noticing on the inhale how that feels to take that full breath in, to allow in, feel your breath expand you. Noticing where there may be resistance in the breath. And on the exhale, as you release and settle in, ground in, noticing where there might be resistance and letting go. Slowly allowing your breath to guide you to the places within you that are asking to be noticed, to be witnessed. If there are thoughts showing up, no need to resist, no need to fight, remembering that your thoughts are an important part of this human experience. Your thoughts are part of the mind, they're part of the ego, and we're taught to fight that. But the invitation here is to practice awareness of the thought, letting them be there, deepening into being the observer of your experience. Taking a deep breath. Now deepening into the heart space, noticing any feelings or emotions that might be showing up. The heart so often just wants space to be witnessed, space to express, very rarely wants to be fixed or needs to be changed. So noticing if the mind is getting in there, trying to change your experience. And seeing if you can continue to be the space and hold the space. And deepening into the body, noticing any physical sensations that are showing up in your body, getting curious with any areas in your body that might feel tense, ache, pains, discomfort, or even just a sense of disconnect or blocks. And beginning to listen to what your body is communicating to you. Because the truth is that our bodies are always speaking to us, often first in soft and subtle ways. When we slow down and we listen, this is where we not only create deeper connection and safety in our system, but we learn how to build trust and honor what we are needing. And so listening. And finally, attuning to your energy. Noticing how your energy feels in this moment. Having brought your attention from out there in your external world inwards to your internal world. Perhaps your energy today feels more alive, more activated. Or maybe your energy feels more grounded and rooted. Noticing. And remembering that no matter what you are going through in your life, no matter what is showing up outside of you, you always have the opportunity to bring yourself back to this space within using your breath, your awareness, and allowing yourself to listen and feel.
Well, I think we could end there.
Oh, we're just starting.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that is a perfect example of regulating the nervous system. That is a tool, and we will return back to that at the end of the episode. So I hope all listeners really enjoyed that and were able, even just for a minute, to tune in.
Yeah. And you can really come back to this, right? So if you didn't get a moment to yourself, you're maybe listening while you're doing other things, I invite you to come back to that practice. And that's something that you can also do on your own throughout the day, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed or you've got lots going on or you're feeling shut down. That is a great way for you to come back to the body and, most importantly, your energy. So
love that. Well, let's dig in. So if you don't already have those notebooks out, get them out. We're about to go back to Science 101 here.
This is Tess's bread and butter, you guys. You're good at this stuff. You love this stuff.
I do. I've missed all my research days.
Yes.
Okay, so the nervous system. And the reason why we are explaining this to you is because when we are talking about the theme of this episode, which is your nervous system being the driver of how you access and how you use your voice, which obviously I'm sure those listening can imagine can affect you in so many ways in your personal relationships, your ability to stand up for yourself, enforce boundaries, in your career. So many careers. There's around the boardroom table, there's relationships with colleagues, presentations, all of the things. And so your nervous system is the root software that is dictating how you access it, how you're able to show up, and how it actually comes across. So when we break this down in the beginning, we're going to be really getting into some examples and exercises for you to determine where your nervous system is at. Because just saying, if I just keep public speaking, I'll eventually get there. Or if I just keep trying and being in a freeze or fight response, eventually it'll break. Won't. So what we actually need to do here is not attack or refine our voice, but actually adjust our nervous system and re-regulate, rewire it. So it's important that you understand the actual basics of how the nervous system works. So for this topic, the nervous system is so complex. It regulates every aspect from our physical and emotional experiences. But for this specific podcast episode, we're going to be focusing on the autonomic nervous system, so the ANS. And that is really related to how we access and use our voice when we're triggered, when we're nervous or under stress. So the ANS is autonomic. It's subconscious, responsible for maintaining homeostasis and responding to stress or safety cues. So to think that a trigger comes up or a situation where you feel nervous, that you are going to be able to decide how you access your voice, how you show up, that is incorrect, because what happens is a nervous system response comes on board, and depending on what muscle is the strongest, we'll get into that in just a second, that will determine how your voice comes across, how you're able to use it as a tool in your life. So it's really, really important. So there are various states that our nervous system can move in and out of. And just really pay attention to this, because in a minute, we're going to run you through an exercise to determine where does your nervous system automatically gravitate to. So the first is parasympathetic. So most of you have probably heard of this. This is our rest and digest state. So think of this as the place where we feel at peace, where the body can slow down, our heart rate reduces, we're able to digest, we're able to start things like tissue repair, immune function. Our body is not in a state of survival. It is in a place of resting, feeling at peace, feeling calm. And this is the state that we want to be in majority of the time. Okay. And it's also a state that we want to be able to choose when we're feeling triggered or in stress. We want to be able to flex this muscle. So then there's sympathetic, which is also known as fight or flight. So sympathetic, which is an amazing part of the human body and the human nervous system, is when our brain perceives that there is danger, a stress response, a trigger, and that activates our body for immediate action. So obviously, historically, we would want this, and we still want this, right? If we touch our hand on something, we want to ensure that our nervous system takes over and automatically can pull our hand off of that hot thing. Right? We wouldn't want to have to sit there thinking, oh, that kind of hurts. Maybe I should do something about that. And so this is characterized typically by increased heart rate, rapid breathing, heightened alertness, a surge of stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. I'm sure we can literally feel our bodies almost beginning that as we're even talking about it. So the body becomes hyper-focused on survival. We divert resources away from things like digestion and immune function so that we can prioritize escaping whatever that danger is, whether that's fighting it or fleeing from it. All right. So when we talk about using our voice when we're in fight or flight, that can typically come across as our voice being very aggressive. Maybe yelling ensues. You don't give others a chance to speak or cannot actively listen because you're so hyper-focused on utilizing your voice in that specific scenario to escape the danger or threat that's coming across. You may always need the last word, right? If you're in the fight stage of that, or you shut down, refusing to communicate, silent treatment, things like that, okay? And that would be fleeing it. That doesn't mean shut down as in I go numb. Shutting down meaning you don't even engage in it. You're fleeing from the situation.
And if I can add something in there, just so y'all No, this is me. And this is what Tess and I are really going to, we're really going to go through with you guys today, how we kind of sit in all of this, because what's beautiful about our experiences and our responses is that we're very opposite in a lot of ways, even though we can be very similar in some ways. But for me, the fight flight it was my way of surviving. And to add to that piece, when you were saying like it can show up as like yelling or getting the last word in, or, what I found too, when that would show up was it could create a boundary of protection. The voice, projecting my voice could actually move that piece energetically away from me to feel safer. So that I just wanted to add in that little piece.
100%. And it's a good point, because when I'm running through this like scientific understanding of the nervous system, know that it is there to protect you in whatever one of those states you are more geared towards. The ultimate goal of the nervous system is to keep you safe, to keep you in survival. It's just sometimes we get stuck, or a specific state becomes stronger than others and we can't move throughout them fluidly. And unfortunately, we're not being chased by a tiger anymore. And it's just maybe, a verbal conversation that's maybe a bit of a debate with someone. And that nervous system gets heightened. And we don't want to have to walk through the world being sort of handcuffed by that. So it's really important. So Christina's is definitely fight or flight. And I just want to go back really quickly to, if you are in parasympathetic, rest and digest, when accessing your voice, that would look like you feeling calm, really present, maybe when voicing your opinion or communicating a boundary. You don't feel heightened. You don't feel that fear coming up. Maybe you're asking questions very openly. You don't have a fear of retribution or a feeling that someone's going to reject you because of that. So you're in a very calm, grounded state when accessing your voice. Active listening would be another example of that.
I just had like such a big aha moment when you were saying that, and I'm so glad you went back and clarified that piece. Because I can now see when I do my channeled guidance, that has been a way for me to access over the course of my journey my voice in a healing way, like using my voice when I'm speaking my channeled guidance, accessing that safety and like, you know what I'm saying? It's just so cool to have just put that connection together. It's like, something, and then when you feel it, you're like, oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Well, and that's really interesting too, because I think later on in the tools piece of this episode, we're going to talk about how you can strengthen those different nervous system states. And one of them is actual experience. And so we'll get into like felt safety and felt experience. So if you can be in parasympathetic more often when using your voice, when a trigger or a stress comes up, you will find that that muscle, that state, can actually compete then with sympathetic.
Ooh, I love that.
Really, really interesting. Imagine for all of those who are, especially 2025, January, on there, I'm getting fit this year in the gym, working my muscles, all the things. Nervous system training is the exact same. And so just like you can't grow your muscles necessarily by just thinking about it, you have to actually get out there and take action. Nervous system training is not avoiding the stimulus or the trigger necessarily. It's actually being in experience and creating felt safety in experience to strengthen those different phases of the nervous system. So getting back to it, the last one, and this is me, spoiler alert, is freeze fawn, which is actually a blended state of in parasympathetic. So first it starts as sympathetic, where we go to use fight or flight. However, using one of those feels basically impossible or ineffective. And so what happens is our body and our nervous system goes into dorsal vagal or collapse, which is where we feel freeze or fawn. So this is really an immobilization, a numbness, or dissociation. And it really is a form of self-protection. Imagine a bear is right there and you're not fighting off a grizzly. And so the body goes into, child's pose, protecting the vital organs. It feels it's its only way to survive by disassociating from the pain, etc. So,
I want to add, me, I love to add in. But it does remind me in a lot of conversations I'll have with clients sometimes where they can be so hard on themselves for not being able to do something. And I try to remind them that this is a nervous system response, often like a freeze, that a lot of the time when we are in freeze and we're in that survival response, the brain actually shuts down to conserve energy. So if you get into maybe a conversation and you find you're in freeze and you can't say the things, well, actually that's your brain. There's nothing wrong with you in that moment. Your brain's actually just shutting down to conserve survival energy.
Yeah. And we'll get to the trauma piece in a minute too, about like, well, why does this happen? How come other people are in fight and they can aggressively use their voice, whereas I get numb and freeze up like an iceberg and can't say anything? And we're going to break this down for you. But when you do go into freeze, especially when you're looking to use your voice, so again, imagine an experience where maybe someone's giving you criticism, or you're in an argument with a partner, with a coworker, a disagreement. That typically can look like a mix of fight and flight, but also shock. So typically you can't stand up for yourself in that moment. You may have racing thoughts in your head or opinions, but you actually don't have an ability to even put them into words or to physically move your mouth to articulate that. You'll also find typically in this state, you begin to shake. And that is actually the body's way of transposing that energy, because you're not able. So when people lash out in fight, Christina, right? We can look at that. That's you actually moving that energy out of the body. When you are in freeze and you cannot flee away or fight, the body will begin shaking. And that's a way to actually try to get that energy out of the body, because it has nowhere else to go because you're immobilized. So then the last one is also fawn. So this is another adaptation to a threat. And so they're very similar, both in dorsal vagal, but this is where individuals prioritize really appeasing the other person, again, back to using our voice, to avoid the conflict or to maintain or create a sense of safety. So this can manifest like people pleasing or suppressing your personal needs in order to stay out of danger. So you may find yourself saying the opposite of what you actually think, or agreeing to something you don't really agree to, despite feeling otherwise inside. Typically, this is followed by regret after the incident. You're like, oh, why did I agree to that? Or why didn't I just stand up for myself in that moment? So you were fawning to create safety in that experience. Okay, so that's the breakdown of it. And we're going to move on to a bit of an analogy that Christina is going to give us. But before that, I want you to take into this next piece of the podcast what your most dominant nervous system reaction is when you go to utilize your voice. So if you're listening, again, make sure you're not driving or in the bathtub or something. Close your eyes. And I just want to walk you through a bit of a guided visualization with some questions here. Let's take a deep breath. Just in through the nose and out through the mouth. I want you to think back to a time when you went to speak your truth. The last time you were either in front of a group of people, or maybe you were having a conversation with a partner or a friend. Maybe you had to put in a boundary. Perhaps you were in a bit of a disagreement or conflict. Allow yourself just to bring up that experience into your mind. And I want you to ask yourself, were you able to access your voice in that experience? And if you were, what did it sound like? Was your voice shaky? Was it loud? Was it calm? I want you to also now just tap into, what did your body feel like in that experience, regardless of if you could access your voice or not? Were you scared? Were you angry? Did you feel numb? Did you begin to tremble? Now, thinking of this and having this experience in your mind, thinking to the explanation we just gave, what nervous system state were you in? Were you in rest and digest? You were feeling grounded, calm, like you could articulate your thoughts? Were you in fight or flight? Did you feel anger rising up? Did you feel like you were being aggressive? Did you shut it down, avoid it, create a wall? Or did you go numb? Did you disassociate? Did you begin to put the needs of that other or the thoughts of that other before your own? Begin fawning. Just take a deep breath here in through the nose and out through the mouth. And lastly, I just want you to think back. If you could go back through memory lane, do you have any earlier experiences in your life where you felt this exact way when trying to use your voice? Think back of when you tried to speak up around your family, maybe your peers. Is there an embarrassing moment that still is lodged in your memory? Maybe when you were in front of a group. Were you ever rejected by someone or your peers by using your voice? Beautiful. We're going to come back to that. But it's just really important for you to have brought yourself through that to understand which nervous system state you typically gravitate towards when you're feeling that stress or that trigger.
Yeah. And I mean, that was such a beautiful little piece there of being able to access more of that awareness because, before I move on to kind of giving a little analogy here to help you all visualize what this can look like, it's also important to understand that I don't believe the goal is for us to just be rid of these things because our nervous system has learned how to survive for so long in these responses. It's learning. Well, it's building awareness of when we are activated and learning how to support ourselves and find safety. And so if you just did that exercise and you were taken to maybe some big pieces or deeper truths and you're like, oh my gosh, wow, try not to be hard on yourself. Try to remember that this is a continual journey of growing and healing. And, Tess and I, while we have spent a lot of years learning about this and growing through these pieces and building awareness and healing, this continues to be pieces that we move through and that we support ourselves in. So if there's one thing I like, it's an analogy. It's a visual, and something that I have found helps in being able to imagine the nervous system is like a thermometer. And so like any thermometer, the bottom represents cold, the top represents hot, and the middle represents kind of like a baseline, 0, so to speak. And I like to think of the nervous system as a thermometer where that 0 mark, that middle mark is kind of like the goal. Can we be there? Understanding that it's a spectrum. So we're not always going to be there. It's going to fluctuate up or down. And depending on what we are experiencing, the things that are going on outside of us, the things that we've been through, the way our nervous system has learned how to respond, we will often veer into certain levels of that thermometer, where fight flight would be the upper part of that thermometer, heightened temperature, more activated energy. So it goes up, and freeze fawn being lower in that thermometer. So the temperature goes down. We go into a freeze state, we get cold, we shut down, whatever that can look like. And so that's something I like to practice and that's actually for anyone who is a parent, or if you have a job where you're working with kids, the thermometer analogy can be really helpful for kids to imagine. It's something that I talk to with Max and Zoe a lot. Where's your thermometer? Like, where are you at on your thermometer right now? And that's actually a way that I'll explain to them how I'm feeling. Like if they're really in my space and I need, whether it's time or I need to just be in my energy for a moment, I will say, I'm high in my thermometer right now. Like my thermometer is getting hot. I need a little bit of space to bring my heat down. And that's really helpful for them to conceptualize because it's something they can see. It's a visual. So yeah, I love to use that as an example because it can just be another way that we can put this piece into better practice.
Yeah, I love that. Great. Well, I feel like we should give some, real life examples of how this works. And what Christina said is so true. It's not some end state. Like I'm always in parasympathetic. No, we don't want that. We want the nervous system to fluctuate. It's, do we have choice? When we feel ourselves maybe going into fight or flight, into the hot zone, Can we be there? Can we see that for what it is? But can we begin to bring ourselves down? It's that muscle. How strong is our ability to do that? And vice versa as well. If we're going into freeze, how can I create a felt sense of safety to come back up to baseline again, so that I have choice in the matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's creating that awareness, but also that muscle strength, which is really like vagal toning. And so we haven't quite touched on that, but it feeds into my example. So if you are someone who has resonated with the freeze or fawn response with the examples that we gave and running you through that exercise, if you feel like, yeah, that's kind of how I typically show up when I'm confronted, when I'm in an argument. I just go absolutely numb. I can't stand up for myself. I have so much fear of creating boundaries. Maybe you have to speak at work and you just freeze up and you start stuttering and you can't find the words. This is for you.
Mm.
So see yourself in these examples.
And before you dive in there, Tess, I think it's also helpful to say that our responses can show up differently in different relationships. And so where I find, sometimes we can be more freeze fawn with certain people or certain energies, and other times we might go to fight flight. So I think that can be helpful as well.
Perfect point, which feeds into actually what I'm about to say. So I love
Yes.
that. When we did that exercise, at the very end, I asked you, when was the first time that you felt this similar response? Maybe you were younger, adolescence, childhood, college, whenever it was. So our nervous system, again, is so much like a muscle, right? So if we're constantly in freeze or fight or flight, we can stay stuck there. Or that can be our dominant state we go into when our body receives a similar state of danger or stress.
Hi, my friends. We're going to pause here for a moment and just let you know, if you're needing deeper support on the journey, some of the ways that you can work with us.
Hey, thanks for listening. It's Tess here. I know life's challenges can feel overwhelming, but through breathwork, there is a way to find clarity, release those stored emotions, and feel more at peace. I offer one-to-one group and online sessions, and I'm excited to share my upcoming digital breathwork audios, perfect for when you need support on the go or in your own time. So if this speaks to you, visit my website, tessrouse.com, or connect with me on socials at @herunearth. Let's breathe through it together.
Hi, my friends. Christina here. If you're needing deeper support on your journey, there's lots of different ways that we can work together. I offer one-to-one soul coaching, as well as one-to-one readings, Akashic Record soul readings, and intuitive guidance sessions with spirit. Everything I do has such a deeper purpose. It's meant to help bring you home to your power within and show you that you can make it through anything that you're going through in your life. So if you want to reach out and contact me, you can find me on my socials at christina.soulempowered, or you can check out my YouTube channel where I provide different teachings and channeled guidance. Same handle at christina.soulempowered, or you can email me, christina@rootsoflovecoaching.ca.
And now, back to the episode. And so what I mean by that is exactly that. So my first example, I'm going to talk about me with alpha females. And so when an alpha female comes into my life and there is conflict, it reminds me, well, I shouldn't say it reminds me, I mean, it does because I have awareness of it now. But for my nervous system, it triggers a freeze fawn response because that mimics the relationship I had with my mother. Okay. Whereas in a conflict with a male, I don't have that same negative childhood experience. I go more into fight or flight. So exactly what Christina's saying there. That's why it's so important to create awareness as to when did this first start? Because it's typically similar relationship dynamics will cause a different nervous system reaction. So because, giving this example, for those who have listened to previous episodes, you would know I did not have a great relationship with my mom. She was very verbally and physically abusive. And so I remember, when I was really thinking about this episode, moments in my childhood where she would be giving criticism or upset about something, and she would be inches away from my face. Like I could feel her breath on my face, yelling at me. And I could not fight back. I could not defend myself physically or verbally, or that would result in probably being slapped or hit. I could not run away because she would not allow that. So I had to sit and endure whatever verbal or physical abuse that was. And so my body, my nervous system reaction was to go into freeze. So it was almost like in those situations, I could almost not hear her, like muffled words. I was completely numb in my body and fully disassociated. And again, this isn't just like a one-time experience. This is like majority of my experience with her when it came to conflict, right? And so imagine now, 20 years later, an alpha female maybe walks in a room, and for some reason, maybe there's a discussion, a debate, and they overpower me. The same nervous system response comes. And so it was interesting, in even the last 5 years, I noticed that I kept getting tested in the same way. And so I've actually done a lot of work now on realizing when an alpha female is in the room with me and there's conflict, or if a girl comments something, let's just say on my social media, I feel the freeze response start. I feel myself start to shut down. I feel like my voice is inaccessible, right? And so we'll talk in a little bit about what tools and practices I've used to begin to unthaw, as Christina said, up onto the thermometer to get back to that baseline so that I can access that, because I'm not in the same situation anymore. And this is why awareness of what was the key or root experience you first began feeling that nervous system response in, because we actually have to go back to that part of us. We'll talk about parts work a little bit later, that version of us, and really help to reprogram and change the nervous system response so that we can now in our reality realize I'm not a little girl who relies on their parental figure. I can voice my opinion. I can stand up for myself or say that's not appropriate, right? And then just one more example I wanted to give for people, because I think this really will resonate for a lot of listeners. So a lot of people, when it comes to public speaking, they say, I'm an introvert. I don't like speaking in front of people. And that may be true to some degree, but there's another level. Like, let's say, again, this could affect you at work. Let's say you're just around a table and everyone's there and you're talking about a project and you need to voice your opinion, but you literally feel like you can't. Like something has hijacked your body and you're like, I can't speak what I need to say. And you may feel like, oh, it's because there's lots of people here. That as well is a freeze response. And so, really thinking back, is there an example in my life where maybe I was around a group of people, I voiced an opinion or I asked a question and I got made fun of? Maybe I got rejected. So in the beginning of my kind of 9-to-5 career, I remember feeling so scared to be seen in a room of people, which is funny now because I literally have to public speak all the time, big presentations, speak on stages, all of that kind of stuff. And I had to retrain my nervous system. And this again stems back to an earlier childhood experience where a group of peers, I said something and got completely sort of mortified, like rejected. And it was still something I was carrying in my nervous system that made me almost not be able to publicly speak in front of people. So for those, definitely pay attention in the tips and tricks part, because that can really be a damper for you in your career and in the line of work that you're doing, right? I know a lot of people talk about it if they're like, hey, I got to start showing up on social media because it's where marketing happens. If you feel scared to do that, there's probably a piece of rejection at play that's triggering your nervous system in that same way.
Yeah, and this is where I find providing this type of piece where we're giving such different sides of the coin can be so helpful.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just it. It's not the external piece that is actually what the danger is, right? If we can remind ourselves that in this moment, that external piece is activating something that is already within us. The way I like to see it is like a stuck energy, because when we experienced whatever that similar thing was in the past, we didn't get to finish the cycle. It was too overwhelming. And so it gets stuck. It creates an energetic imprint within us so that every time we experience something outside of us that feels like that again, we get activated as an opportunity to heal. But if we don't know this, we're just stuck in this all the time.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the times too, and we can talk about this, what we end up doing is avoiding those triggers and those situations, which like, well, that person just, I can't even deal with them. Absolutely not. Or whatever it is, when in actuality, it's just going to keep coming up because, it's the universe's way of showing you hey, we got to look at this piece. Like, you don't need to feel imprisoned by it.
Oh,
There is a way to heal through that. Nervous system regulation, you can be as aware as possible. You could listen to this podcast 20 times, as a matter of fact. If you don't try it in experience, if you don't feel it and move through it in feeling in the body, somatically,
yeah.
no, nothing changes. Nothing changes.
And this is where our hardest relationships, this is it, you guys. Like,
Yeah.
these are the triggers. Like, when you are getting activated with your partner, this is it.
Mhm.
And there is the invitation. And I think this is where you and I, while we've had many challenges in our partnerships, that is the invitation is you either do it in this one or it's going to show up in the next one. You know?
Let's hear about the other side of the coin.
So I want to talk a little bit about my fight-flight response. I want to preface by saying I am going to briefly note some pieces around childhood sexual abuse. And so, this is a bit of a trigger warning. If that is something you have experienced, or if right away you hear that and it feels triggering, you have the choice right now to fast forward through my piece, because that is the truth. Healing happens with choice. So don't feel like you have to listen to this and endure what maybe your nervous system isn't ready for yet. So please take a moment and sit with that before you decide whether you want to listen to this piece or fast forward through. So for me, my upbringing, well, it's had some really beautiful, loving pieces. There were also some really hard pieces. And one of these pieces was experiencing sexual abuse when I was young, between the ages of 7 and 10, with an adult in my life, not in my family, but a very close adult who was part of our kind of outside family community. And I actually didn't realize this until I was deep into my healing quite a few years ago. Because my belief is that when we aren't ready to be able to hold something, we're not always shown it. And I was shown it at a time on my healing journey when I was ready. It was in deep, deep meditation where it came up and I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And so that big piece paired with a really hard experience with my parents' divorce, their separation and their divorce, it was quite traumatic. There was a lot of uncontrollable pieces that occurred where it caused a lot of trauma. Those two pieces played very big roles in my fight-flight response that began to really form. And I always used to be I couldn't understand why when I was younger and as a teenager, I was so angry. A lot of people don't actually believe it when I say in my high school years, I fought a lot. Like fist fights, which is wild. Like, I think about that now and I'm like, I could never do that now. But I also think about it and I'm like, but it makes so much sense because I was so angry and beneath that, so sad. Oh, and I just have so much compassion. I have so much compassion for my little self because I survived these really scary pieces that felt so out of my control. And I survived through finding safety in externalizing my power. And that's what my fight-flight response was. I would either fight or I would flee, run, which I see is a huge response for me in relationship. I will just shut down when things get way too overwhelming and want to run. Thankfully, I have a partner that won't let me run. But gosh, so much compassion because, these things that I was experiencing. And you know what? I say this a lot. My parents did the best that they could. And I think we truly do the best that we can with the awareness that we have. They didn't have the tools back then. They didn't have the awareness. I thank God where I'm at now on my journey being a parent with what we get to utilize and what we get to know now. They didn't know any of that back then. I don't even know if trauma was a word that they recognized. And so what I needed, they couldn't provide me with as much as I needed it. And so I had to take my power back. And I learned how to do this through externalizing it, through yelling, fighting, making myself heard, And I also realize now that in doing some of those things, when I would use my voice in a really loud way, or I would use my body in a physical way, that actually allowed me to feel safer because I was pushing the energy from what felt right on me, way too overwhelming, out there. And so it allowed me to create space to feel safer.
Yeah, and you're bringing up this point too. I think for anyone resonating with your story or your nervous system response is that you felt unsafe in your body as well because your body was violated in so many ways. And so rather than sitting in it, we're focusing on the external situation, the fisticuff at lunch or whatever it may be, or the drama between the yelling and the arguing, right? It allows more of that wall, more of that armor to create space between you and that.
Yes. Yeah. It was armor. It allowed me to feel protected. And that is what you said there is there's so much truth in that my body didn't feel safe. In fact, it felt so unsafe. I wasn't even in it for a lot of my life. And that's also the healing journey, is learning how to come home to our bodies. Hello, somatic work. Learning how to come home to our bodies and feel safe in them again. Oh my gosh, I could cry again. There is nothing that compares to being able to finally get to be back in your body, feeling safe and grounded and embodying my power rather than externalizing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of pieces there. And this is, again, the beauty of doing this work. One, we begin to understand why we've been the way we've been our whole lives. And two, we get to just experience such deeper healing and release because we don't have to carry this stuff anymore. And that's the nervous system too. Your nervous system gets activated because there is something you are carrying inside you that is unprocessed. And you don't have to carry that anymore.
Oh, man, do I feel that? And I think too that if you're sitting there, even thinking about if you have a partner or a great friend and you're like, why do they react that way? Like having that empathy and awareness of them as well, especially in intimate partnership. I think of parents too. If you see a mom that like yells and she doesn't, like she's such a loving mom and she yells, it's like, that's because she's still holding something. The kids being out of control, the kids freaking out, that's triggering something probably way back when she was a kid or that was modeled to her that is triggering that automatic reaction, right? And so, I think that it's a great segue into how do we, in the situations with our partners, with other relationships, in the boardroom, whatever it may be, how do we work through this? Because you can know it all. And I do think of conscious parenting a lot because I'm like, I'm not going to yell. I am going to be grounded and calm. And, like I'm already thinking about when they come home from school today. I don't know about anyone else, but like, the kids are a bit whiny when they get home. Like, oh, it was the worst day. I didn't get a ride on the swing. And you're like, okay, like, did anything good happen? Like, And then next thing you know, you're like frustrated, unhinged. Yeah. And it's because it's not the pre-awareness is important. This information we're sharing with you is so important. It's though, can you give yourself the tools and practices in the experiences? It's in experience where that nervous system gets retrained, where different pieces of it get strengthened.
Yeah. And, like also shout out to moms because like, I love you too, dads, whoever's listening, but like moms carry a whole other level of guilt. And I mean, we could just have a whole other conversation about this, but my anger when I became a mom was what got me on my journey. Cause I was like, I am so angry. Oh, well, yeah, of course, because I can't control everything outside of me anymore. These little humans aren't meant to be controlled. Yeah. And so, yeah, if you are listening, especially moms, that is your nervous system dysregulated. That's not you as in, you're not an angry person. You're not a bad mom. You are dysregulated. So let's shift that because boy, oh boy, like when we get off the shame train and we come at it with a place of curiosity, we can start to see what we actually need.
Yeah. I know we're going to have a future episode too on unconscious relationships, but you bring up this really good point. I think kids are the most beautiful mirror for us to begin our healing because there's shame. I shouldn't be acting this way towards this like sweet little innocent soul. And there's like this like check that happens. We're like, whoa, like I'm being yelly or whatever, right? Or I'm doing the things I said I would never do.
Yeah.
But also in partnership, that shame doesn't come as easily because we're like, well, they're an adult, they deserved it, or like they triggered me, da da da. But so if you don't have children and you're like, oh yeah, well, I only yell at my husband or my wife or like whatever, check yourself.
Same thing.
Our triggers are not only maybe pieces about the other person, but very much a mirror for us to look inward and look at how our nervous system is responding. Like Christina said, what am I still carrying? And what age did this start? Because that's actually the part of you need to go back and work with. So let's jump into some tools here, shall we?
Yeah.
For a good laugh, I feel like one of the things I ask myself since I've been working on nervous system regulation, especially when it comes to accessing my voice, is the first thing I ask, because Christina and I are opposites, is take a deep breath. And then I go, what would Christina do in this response? Not that I will be having fisticuffs on my lunch break.
I call them fisticuffs.
Sounds better than like a lunchtime brawl, doesn't it?
Oh my God, I love you.
But if I can step closer to what and again, this is because I'm in relationship with her and I see so much of her response to different triggers. This is literally the stuff we gab about all the time. There's so much learning that we both absorb from each other. If I can begin to gravitate more towards her response, it means I'm coming to that baseline 0 degrees in that thermometer, right? And so I always, when a triggering thing comes up and I feel the freeze come and I feel like I want to retreat, and let's just say, you know, for those that use social media, there's trolls out there. You know, you get some hate comment that feels a bit targeted and, you know, you're feeling a bit ego damaged. And I want to retreat. I want to delete the comment. I don't want to respond. I'm just like, oh gosh, like I don't even know how to respond. Maybe they're right. Maybe everyone's thinking that of me. And I go into the disassociation spiral. I think, what would Christina do in this case? Like, she'd probably voice note that person and give them a piece of her mind if she was not regulated. But okay, my job here is to actually, what I like to do first is know that you're not going to be able to access your voice right away when you are training your nervous system. So I always give myself 12 to 24 hours. And that's so for me in freeze, I can unthaw a bit. I can come up to a bit of a baseline just by regulating my body. And I'm doing that when you're in freeze and you want to get back up to parasympathetic, which is that baseline, you have to create safety. So safety is the only way into parasympathetic. We need a felt sense, a perceived sense of safety. So if I'm feeling in danger and I go into freeze, how can I create that in my body? The first and quickest way to do it, because you're going to have racing thoughts, is using your breath. So, you know, when you're feeling, even someone who's not really into this work, but you're an overwhelmed mom, let's say, and you're like, I just need a minute. That is because you know when you can just take a breath, it signals to the nervous system, oh, we are regaining safety. So taking those slow, methodical breaths, what's really important is that your out breath is longer than your in breath. That is actually what helps us to trigger the chemical reactions and all the different pieces that are going to bring us back to baseline. So taking time, taking a breath, and then I like to use like visuals to create a sense of safety. Where's a place I feel safe? What part of me is coming up right now? Because again, if it's freeze, typically it's something like in my childhood to do with my mom. How can I reparent that part of me that's feeling unsafe? Because I know that I'm not 12 anymore. I'm an adult and I have options and I don't have to take abuse from people, right? And so it's creating that felt sense in my body of safety and then coming back to actually use my voice. And that may mean messaging that person back in a regulated, grounded way, but not just allowing myself to not say anything, because that's my wound, right? Is to not say anything and to freeze.
Yeah. And I wonder too, also to go with that is like, or the fawn will come up and maybe you'll try to like,
keep
go
that
into
connection. Straight repair.
Repair, right? And so what I'd love to add to that, and this is kind of on the fly, but I think it'd be helpful. So then what would I do in that situation? And what you have taught me is the exact opposite. What would Tess do when I get activated? Because I go to a fight flight, because I will either come at it with you guys. I don't fight anymore, for the record, but my energy can feel combative if I'm activated. Or I'll just be like, whatever, and walk away. And like, that's not helpful either, because both are not solving conflict. So then I'll say, okay, also practicing the 24-hour, we've like really practiced that with each other. And you always remind me of that. Because for me, it's very easy for me to just want to say something right away, for me to just want to get right in there and like give them a piece of my mind or whatever that thing is. And so taking that time and bringing myself, deactivating myself, bringing myself down. And then what would Tess do? Well, probably would maybe sit with it with a bit more reason, with a bit more logic, or how can I repair here, which would not be my go-to. Repair is not always my go-to. So that gives you a different idea depending on where you typically are at on the thermometer. There's some options. It's either kind of bringing your energy up. Another way I like to think of it is like if you're sciencey, if you remember states of matter, right? Freeze being the ice cube, how do you melt? So how do you get energy moving? And then if you're in fight flight, that would be more of a gas. So how do you turn that back to more liquid? You cool it. So how do you bring yourself down a little bit? So I wanted to just provide that other side of it, just because that's such a great way to think of it.
Yeah, I love that.
And I just got this idea. Because often we're in relationship with partners that are the opposite response. This is giving me like,
how would we feel if we didn't have it?
Right. And so how would my partner be responding to this? And maybe there's an invitation here for you to respond, both of you, in opposite ways.
Well, and I mean, this is the last piece I'll just drive home, is that we can't avoid the situations, or else we will just stay in the same cyclic state, right? We will stay as a gas, we will stay frozen as an ice cube when those experiences happen. So it's in the container of experience that we actually get to practice these. So maybe you start by doing it with someone you feel really safe with. And for me, that was Christina. So believe it or not, listeners, we've been in a few disagreements or arguments around certain things, but she was able to show me that it's safe to use my voice, that she can then regulate herself to receive it, to not be aggressive in her response, to be empathetic to my trauma, my nervous system reaction, and vice versa for her. And so I think if you're looking to really strengthen your voice and use it, and you're coming from either state, who in relationship can you begin to try and begin exercising this with, right? So maybe it's with your partner, your best friend, maybe it's your coworker and you're gabbing about these things, whatever it is. But when those come up, especially like, and we gave this example of online, right? Or a text message or a voice note, you have time to do that 12 to 24-hour rule. But in person, it's different. And so I just want to leave you with this last little tool that I use. If it's in person, you have to get time. You have to get time. That is the first piece. You cannot access your voice. So if it's you with your kids, Mommy, Daddy needs a minute right now, I will be right back. Like Christina said, my thermometer's too high. I need just some space. If you are, let's just say you're out at a restaurant and someone says something that's triggering you, I'm just going to use the washroom. I'll be right back, right? I'm just going to go to get a breath of fresh air. I'll be right back, assuring them you're coming back, giving yourself that space to create that felt sense of safety. And that goes for both fight or flight or in freeze or fawn, creating that sense of safety so that your body can begin to move you back down to baseline. And then you begin to practice using your voice in the way that you want, which is grounded and calm. And know that it takes rehearsal to do that. At first, it's not going to come out right. For me, it's going to be stuttery. For Christina, maybe she's going to catch herself getting a bit charged, and then she's going to retract and a bit more, and then she's going to retract. And eventually, as that vagal toning, which would be like muscle building of coming in between those nervous systems, as that strengthens, you'll find that you're able to access it way quicker, way more grounded.
Yeah, so much good stuff. Like there were so many different pieces there I was thinking about, and how that is really it, is when we have these safe relationships where we can heal together and really practice putting these pieces into practice. Just as you have been able to learn how to safely use your voice, I have learned how to find safety in not having to use my voice. I've learned how to find safety in grounding into my body and being able to just be in the space with you without having to externalize anything. And so, yeah, just so much power in having safe relationships to be able to really heal these pieces within, because that's where the healing occurs, is in relationship. That's where the deepest healing is brought up. And I want to add just a couple pieces here. One, somatic work, two parts work. So somatic work was something that I found a few years ago on my journey, and, divine timing, truly, because I had just experienced, I was just going through another kind of big rock bottom. It was after the separation with Max and Zoe's dad, and I had been going in my fight flight for about 9 or 10 months. And then I collapsed. My nervous system was like, oh, we can't do this anymore. And it was in that second sort of big mental health rock bottom that I began to learn about the nervous system. And I did this through somatic work. Shout out to Carrie, my therapist. You are an angel in human form. And I personally have been working with her for almost 3 years now. And the work that we have done has been so groundbreaking that I then took a big course on how to hold the space with my clients and how to do somatic work and somatic healing with clients. Because here's the thing, and I know, Tess, you're going to just really agree with me on this one. Talk therapy will only get you so far. It has such an important place because it helps us talk and get things out and build awareness of our stuff, but you have to get in the body. Because when you get in the body with these big pieces that show up, whether it's breath work, whether it's somatic work, when these big pieces show up, you have to finish the cycle. And talk therapy often will not allow you to do that. You're not going deep enough. And being able to oscillate between what feels unsafe in the nervous system and into safety, which is what somatic work you learn how to do, allows you to complete the cycle and allows you to heal the stuck energy that is showing up when you get activated.
100%.
Preach.
Say it louder.
And that's where I think, Tess, you and I we're so passionate about this because we've gotten to experience this somatically in such different ways, the breath work, the somatic work. And in addition to this, parts work. And this is another piece of somatic work that I learned how to do on my own journey. And now I do with clients as well, is being able to then, when the activation shows up in your body, and come at it from a lens of, these are different parts. These are different fragmented parts within you that are showing up, that are looking for cohesion, that are looking to feel part of the system, but don't. And they show up in very protective ways. Working with those parts also helps us find that healing in the nervous system. Yeah. Because your protectors in different ways are showing up as activations. Whether it's freeze, whether it's a part that shows up that freezes you, whether it's a part that shows up that puts you into fight flight, whatever that is, these parts, learning how to work with them also helps bring cohesion. So, girl, I could talk about this stuff for days.
I know. And we do have a past episode on the nervous system, not specifically related to accessing and utilizing your voice, as well as parts work. And probably we'll be doing another one on parts work with different examples and sort of a different bit of a lens. So if you need more information on either of those practices, definitely go back and listen to those.
Yeah. Yeah. And, this is also beautiful work that Tess and I do. We do it because we first have found so much healing and expansion and safety on our own journeys. So if you're curious around learning more about breath work, Tess is your girl. If you're curious around learning about somatic work, parts work, I'm your girl. Don't hesitate to reach out, even if you just have questions. I mean, I love talking about this, so
yeah. I love it. No, I love it so much. Yeah, and I think somatic work in the body, that's where the nervous system lives. That's where you got to get to. So we'll be talking about all of that on the pod. So listen in.
Yay.
I think wherever you're listening from, if this resonated for you, if any other episodes have, please share the word. We want everyone to hear some of this so that we can help support them on whatever part of their journey they're at. So please share it. Send it to a friend, like it, subscribe, leave us a review if you want, wherever you're listening to your podcast.
Yay. Okay, my friends, thank you for listening. We hope you guys have the best day, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.